Welcome to a very windy Wanaki High School and the WIAA Level 3 edition of Prep Rally. I'm Rob Hernandez alongside Jason Galloway, Dennis Semrau. Let's start first with the Division I breakdown of the fact that there are no Big 8 teams left. And in my opinion, this is unfolding just as we expected it to, with the Classic 8 dominating the northern bracket and Kimberly and Fond du Lac dominating the southern bracket, specifically Kimberly. Dennis, are we surprised that no Big 8 teams are left?
No, but I think Middleton could have won that game last week. They went to a 2-minute offense midway through the fourth quarter and got back into it. And if not for a 62-yard punt that trapped them on their one, then they threw a pick. It's possible we could have had overtime in that game and they might have pulled it out. I thought those two teams were fairly even. Kimberly, though, is the class of the North. Jason,
you've seen the Big 8 all year. I think we thought that the competitive nature of the conference would set them up well for postseason, but I think what we found is you still have to have the athletes and you still have to execute throughout the postseason.
That's true, and you have to, not be playing the #1 team in the state as well. I think.
Good point.
I think coming in, no one was going to beat Kimberly. Janesville Craig, without their quarterback, wasn't going to have much of a chance against Fondy, and then that Middleton-Fondy game was kind of a toss-up, and Middleton couldn't get it done. But yeah, I think the Big 8. I don't think they're. I think these playoffs kind of make them look a little worse than they actually are. I think maybe if they got a little bit better draw, maybe we'd still have at least one alive. But it's a little unfortunate for them, but they'll come back strong next year.
Yeah, and I guess if I had a beef, I'd like to see the Fond du Lac Kimberly line one up and McWanago Arrowhead one down, so that the winner of McWanago Arrowhead would play the winner of Franklin Milwaukee Marquette. If we're about geographical representation, that's a geographically representative bracket, and that wasn't the case this year. And the WIA will eventually probably have to answer to it, because it's different in football than it is every other sport. It's different in Division I than it is other brackets throughout the postseason. So, again, we go back to what we said: 7 divisions. Sometimes you make your own problems, and I think that's the case this year. Let's get to games that will be played involving area teams right here at Waunakee High School. A blast from the past: the Slinger Owls against the Waunakee Warriors. And Dennis, I think the two of us are old enough to remember how that postseason rivalry kind of launched the Waunakee football program that we know now back in the late 90s.
It did, and that's where Waunakee kind of had a little bit of success until they just became the dominant team, not only in our area but in the state. This is a very good matchup, a deep backfield for Slinger, big size in the line, which Waunakee doesn't have a lot of. Both teams will play great defense.
I think the one difference, Jason, in this Waunakee team from the ones that made that run a few years ago is the fact that they're not as big as they used to be up front, but they don't really have to be. They've got Troy Laufenberg, who last week against Milton showed he's got quite a cannon for an arm. I don't know if I've ever seen anything that with a running back switching positions and becoming the Wildcat quarterback, and then all of a sudden, there was a decent win last week here, but it was able just to throw the football over the field.
Yeah, he can do it all. He's the key to their team, and I think when you look at this matchup, it's going to come down to who can run the ball more effectively. If both teams average more than 220 yards on the ground per game, and it's going to be a tough game for Waunakee. We saw Slinger beat a DeForest team last week that won their conference and that beat Waunakee earlier in the year. So we'll see if Waunakee can get through.
And Rob, if there ever was a national champion for punt, pass, and kick, it has to be Laufenberg. If he never entered, why, I don't know. Defensively, he's one of the best defensive backs, I think, in the state. Running, he can run, and now he's proven he can throw. They've taken the kicking game a little bit away from him, getting some help from the younger player, but here's a guy, this is, right now one of the premier players, I think, in the state, and he'll be an all-state candidate.
Well, and Slinger, the only finished second in the Little 10 behind Wisconsin Lutheran, and that segues into Division III, where Wisconsin Lutheran and Waukesha Catholic Memorial meet on Saturday, or on Friday, in one half of the area bracket, and the winner of that game to face the winner of Reedsburg Mount Horeb Barneveld, two Badger North teams. Reedsburg pulling off the upset last week, knocking off defending state champion Monona Grove. But Jason, the defending champ is out, but the Badger Conference has two pretty good teams left in the postseason.
Yeah, this really shows you how good the Badger North is, that they've got 3 teams left in the playoffs, and one of the co-champions is not one of them.
That's right.
I think in terms of this game, Mount Horeb beat Reedsburg by 3 points in week 7. It should be another really close game, and I think the winner of this game will have a shot next week.
And Dennis, all the controversy last week with the suspensions of several players from Mount Horeb-Barneveld wasn't a factor, really. They took care of business against Jefferson.
Yeah, supposedly for a team that lost their defensive backfield, they just went out and outscored them. And I think that's what it's going to be. It's a track meet. The last time Jefferson and Mount Horeb-Barneveld played, it was 42-35 at halftime, and this one was just very similar to it. Very high scoring. You really have to like the way Mailer is played. There's another player that's got to have some kind of all-state candidacy, but there's so many great quarterbacks around. He's just a playmaker, and they've got plenty of them on offense.
Dennis, in Division 4, Capital Conference will be center stage in the area as Marshall taking on Lodi. The South against the North, chance once and for all, the last chance for each division to prove itself here in that battle.
Yeah, the North are the bigger schools, and you'd say they might have the advantage. Lodi's played great except for their loss against Watoma during the season. Marshall, though, that's kind of a surprise. They knocked off Broadhead Judah 9-7. Very that speaks highly, I think, for their bounce-back ability. Lost a key game late in the season to cost them a conference title, but they're looking at playoffs. Whoever goes to the semifinals. So who would have thought?
Jason, we'll go to you for Division 5 and 6 here. Lancaster Arcadia, a rematch of a game earlier this year, and Cambridge was seeing St. Catherine's, the Cambridge Blue Jays very quietly still alive in this postseason. How do you like those two matchups?
I like both of them. Obviously, like you mentioned, Lancaster and Arcadia played earlier in the year. Lancaster lost on the road by 7. Should be another close game this time. Lancaster's got that sort of championship mentality. They haven't, won a state title, but making it to the state title game the last 3 years, I think they know how to win in the postseason, and I give them a good chance to win this one, even though they lost earlier in the year. And then Cambridge, they've made a great run. They've got their running back Josh Owens continues to tear it up on the ground, and Racine's defense, though, is coming off 2 straight shutouts in the playoffs, and that's a really good defense. So I think it's going to be the key in that one's going to be making sure Josh Owens can continue his success on the ground and move the ball down the field against Racine.
And something's got to give there. Something's got to give in Division 6 with Lake Country Lutheran at Darlington. Lake Country, a very diversified offense, but a 1,700-yard passer. And Darlington, of course, has been very stubborn on defense and has been able to get their wing tee in gear with 3 running backs that do great things down there at Darlington.
Yeah, Darlington has won every game by 27 points or more since their Week 1 loss. They're on fire right now. But I think Lake Country Lutheran is going to come in here as a really motivated team. They're a team that went undefeated and was given the number 2 seed behind Darlington, who had a loss. And whether that's, I'm not saying Darlington doesn't deserve the number 1 seed. I think they do, but I think from Lake Country Lutheran's perspective, they're going to come in really wanting to prove that they're the best team in that group.
Well, I think they made a statement last week with 27 first-half points in the win over Cuba City. Never let the Cubans get into that ball game. Dennis, a lot to talk about in Division 7, and we start first with the defending state champions, the Blackhawk Warriors. They do knock off the number 1 seed last week in Ithaca, and now it's a rematch against Potosi, and it looks like the Six Rivers will not go down quietly.
No, you look at that Ithaca team, high-scoring team in the state, and they got shut out. That says something right there for Blackhawk, I think. The playoff experience last year, it's definitely a factor. Potosi, though, is back to where they've been. They've dominated that league, I think, 6 of the last 7 years until Blackhawk took over last year. So you got to love that. Flip a coin on this one. It's a conference game. Who'd have thought we were playing a conference game to go to one step away from state? Yeah,
and then the winner of that game, Dennis, to face the winner of Peppa Allman against another local team, Bangor, out of the Scenic Bluffs. Bangor 11-0. Another game that I'm interested in, Cambria Friesland against Allman Bancroft. We've talked about the fact that there's a lot of paths available for the Division 7 state finals, especially now that Burlington Catholic Central is out. They lost to Potosi last week, but Cambria Friesland's a team that's had some pretty good postseason success. Maybe doesn't get the respect it deserves for what it's done in the postseason.
No, they had to go down in the last game they beat Rio to win the conference title, and I think they've just used that as a springboard. But that's a team that can run the ball very well, and as we know, it's cold.
That's right.
Run the ball and play defense. That's a good team right now. Earmarked for another week.
We'll be back here again on Friday in live chat form with our noon live chat looking ahead to the Level 3 playoff games. Then, of course, our live blog will be up and running throughout the night on Friday. And, of course, again on Saturday, I'll be down at the Darlington Lake Country Lutheran game, and we'll have scores, updates, and insights from all over the area and throughout the state as we get closer to the state finals at Camp Randall in just a couple weeks. For Dennis Semrau and Jason Galloway, I'm Rob Hernandez. Thanks for watching the Level 3 edition of Prep Rally. We'll see you at the stadium.